Well, we have someone coming up with tips to up your game and much more. So if hacking is an art, we have a very talented artist coming up next. Our next speaker has been in this industry for over 10 years, CEO of Web Immunify, winner of multiple events at HackerOne, Integrity, Bug Bash, and many more, and for the very first time at BSides Ahmedabad, Hussein Daher.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. So, before we start, I'd like to take a minute to thank the organizers of this event for inviting me over here. So obviously, when I started Bug Bounty in the first 2014, 2013, my first friends in Bug Bounty were Indians. So it's really an honor for me to be here with you today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So today we're going to talk about Bug Bounty, and the name of the talk is Bug Bounty on Steroids. I'm going to try to showcase some vulnerabilities I have found over the last year, and try to explain and try to see how did we end up finding this vulnerability, and how did we think about the vulnerability in the first place, because obviously you might see sometimes some applications, some endpoints, and you don't know how to start or where to go, or what exactly to look for when you look for it. So we're just trying to go and try to explain this to you today. So before we start, my name is Hussein Daher. I'm a Lebanese living in West Africa and Ivory Coast. I'm a bug bounty hunter, security researcher. I'm Yahoo Elite, if you know that Yahoo has an elite section. I have won the Integrity Lead up in this year, the first one, the Apache CRS WAF, and also Vigilante Award 2010, a HackerOne event. Also Best Team Collaboration, Bug Bash Best Team Collaboration. I have more than 1,000 vulnerabilities reported altogether on all platforms combined. So let's just see the big titles of the talk. So first we have account takeover via confusion. We have transportable server-side secret forgery. We have local file disclosure and bypasses, hacking a bank by finding a zero-day, and SSO bypass techniques. So to those who know me here, you know that I love going for server-side issues, server-side vulnerabilities. So that's what I love going for. And we're going to have a lot of this today in the talk and trying to get them really well explained to everyone. So if anyone does have any question while we go through, you can just raise your hand and I will make sure to stop and try to explain more. So let's start. Are you ready? You have the first talk here, the first big title, Account Takeover via Confusion. So I was hacking on this application, which is a public HackerOne program. And the application allows the user A to invite user B to his organization. And user A is able to ask for a password reset for the account he invited. And user B gets the reset token link to his mails. So said like this, it doesn't look really obvious, but if you go from a hacker mind, you might think that there is something to do here. So just think about it. For the sake of this report, we can't show a screenshot because the company might sue me really quick. So we're just going to try to imagine how it's going. You're invited, you have this application where you have an organization. And then you're able to invite someone to your organization, and you're also able to click on a functionality that says, okay, reset password for his user. And once you do so, the user is going to get a reset link to his email. So this is something that you might see in your days of Bug Bounty, because nowadays you have a lot of applications where you have a lot of organizations. You just sign up, have an organization, invite users, remove users and stuff. And how can we try to exploit this? So here's the proof of concept I came with. User A, which is us, the hackers, we invite user B to his instance, to our own instance, where user B is his second email address. So you're user A, and you control email of user B. You're going to invite user B to your account, to your organization. And then as a hacker, you ask for a password reset for your own second user B, which you had previously invited. After that, you go and you just copy the link to user B email address and you just save it for a second. As a hacker, you go back to your account and you just like change your mail, change the email of user B to the victim's account's email. And then once you open the reset password link you got previously, what happens? Bah, you get account takeover really easy and really quick. So this is like a sum up for this. You have just like user A invitation to user B to join his organization. User A, again, password reset inside the application, you just like for password reset. So as we can't like post screenshots of this because the application has really strict them and you might know where or which application it is. I'm just like trying to explain it like this. But when you have some kind of this account, this kind of organization, always look for the functionalities that might be abused, you know, because it might not seem obvious to others, but if you spend time, you just read the documentation, you just like try to play around with the functionalities and everything you have in your hand, it might lead to something that's exploitable, you know. So always try to stick to the functionalities, to the documentations, and try to gather all the functionalities you can have in your account. And so as we said, user B just saves the link to the password reset, and then as a hacker you change back the email of user B to your victim's email. And once you open the reset password link, magically it goes and reset password for the user C. So that was a confusion because what was happening on the application, the side, they had two kinds of separate databases login. So when you sign up, your user is going to get assigned another user on another database that was like SSO thing. So once, while resetting the password and changing the email back, one email was getting updated in one database, but it wasn't updated in the second database. So what was happening that you could just like take over the account, and the bounty was 4K for this one. Not much, huh? Let's just go forward and go for server-side request forgery, which I love a lot. I had this application after, you know, doing everything you might know of, trying to gather endpoints, trying to crawl the applications. I had this specific request. And when you see the parameters here, is there anything that catches your mind? I think there is something that's really obvious that you might see every day in other applications. There is nothing that like can catch your eye directly. But once you think about it, the region parameter looks really fishy. Because when you think about regions, you just say, oh, that's like Amazon, yeah? Because you have all these regions and you have all these applications getting connected to it in the back end. And so it's cool to have some requests like this when you can try to play a bit with. So my testing methodology for such endpoints. First, we set a random value inside the region parameter, and you look for specific responses or specific behavior of the application. In our case here, once I just like change the region parameter to test or any string that you want, the result was a timeout response from the application. So that it catches your mind directly. You might get like 404 or you might get other 403 maybe. So this is also something you have to look up for and try to keep in mind. When you try to change the parameters value and you see like a huge change in the page's response, you have to tell yourself that there is something going on here that we might be able to exploit. So as we said here, we had a timeout response from the application. That's fishy. Just freezing a bit after that, I built a little list containing different payloads to hopefully find and identify some interesting behavior. I have this host, which is called 0xp.cc, which I own. And I gathered a bit of payload that I wrote myself, put them in a list, and just like start fusing the parameter and see what's going on here. So as soon as I send the fusing list, when I send the list, I have this payload 0xp.cc and the slash at the end, which triggered like a DNS response from the server. So that's really interesting because now if we're getting some DNS interaction, we might be able to do something interesting. So from here, you know that you're on the right path. You might be a little bit far from the result you want to achieve, but as soon as you get like the DNS callback, you know that it's going to be a good story. The application, what's happening in the backend? When you see that, you know that's something happening from the backend, because I didn't, here, we had a ping back to sns.0xp.cc. It's really interesting to mention it. So when we entered the payload, we got a DNS callback to this specific host, which is sns.mydomain. So that's really important for the next slides, because now what I do usually when I get this kind of stuff, I try to think around and try to gather as much info as I can to try to be able to know how the application is handling my input. As for here, the application looks like to be sending, to be reading the region parameter value and issuing the following request, which is get sns dot the value of the region dot amazonaws.com. And from here, I think it looks obvious how the exploitation is going to go. Just upon sending the xp.cc and slash in the payload, we have the following request being issued by the server, which is sns.xp.cc, and we have a slash that's breaking the Amazon host. Forward, we're breaking out of the syntax. How can you break out of this syntax? So for this, we had two options. First option is really easy. You just go create a host, create a subdomain for your domain, sns.0xp.cc, just create it, use the previous payload, and bam, you get what you need here. But I didn't think about it really quick, and after sending the report, which is this kind of payload I used, I just like was, yeah, I could have done it easier, you know? I could have gone for this. But you can't have all the ideas at the same time, you know? So what works for you, just go for it. It might end up paying well. The payload here is anything, and you add 0xp.cc and a slash after that. So the server's translation to that is like snsx at 0xp.cc slash .amazonaws.com. So this way, we broke out of the SNS subdomain, we specified our own domain, and we escaped from the host Amazon AWS part. So after I got this idea, I'm sorry for the images, I'm not sure what's happening, but yeah, I'm going to try to explain. So I tried with google.com with the same payload, and by miracle, just it gave me back here the google.com content like 404 not found. And now I know that I'm definitely on something and I'm on the good road. We can just go further with that. Good. But it's not enough. How can you read AWS secrets located at the AWS API endpoints you all know of? The application is doing HTTPS request, while for this we have to use HTTP, because Amazon is not going to accept HTTPS request to date. Pretty easy, we're going to use a redirect to just force like from HTTPS back to HTTP and just like give us the key. So we have this payload which we came up with. You all know about the local domain.pw domain, just setting like a 301 redirect, and redirect to Amazon host on HTTP, again with all these the parameters that's needed. So we first have the redirect to HTTP, and we have this application, and here is the application's request, which says, okay, SNS at, and the whole bunch of stuff we were coming up with. We had the bus redirects here. So first, the application is going to gather the content from local domain.pw, and then from there we get back to, to Amazon AWS. But we still have a problem here. The application request here is sending like the Amazon.aws part in part of the request now, because you have escaped it via the slash. But we don't want it here, so easy one here. We just have to add a question mark to escape this part and get it out of the way for the Amazon SSRF. And just by doing that, bam, here is a little summary of what's happening. We have the application parser sending the request. We have the 301 redirect. And we have finally the last link the application is going to browse to and give us back the content with the escaped quotation mark to escape from the .amazon.aws thing. And here we go. Luckily, we just get the keys, and that's what you want to do. But for that, like, okay, the application was here for years and years, but no one found it. Why? Because no one tried to notice the little details. You have to really think about where did I see that? Have I seen that before? Can I exploit it in some other way? If there's something I can do here. And this was a straight away server-side request forgery with some kind of trickery that we have used for that. So we're finishing this server-side request forgery. Is there any questions so far for it here? Seems like everyone got it, huh? Let's go forward. So we have the second topic of the talk is going to be local file disclosure bypasses. You always find this local file inclusion, local file disclosure, and you just get like 403, go home, man. You're not going to hack us today. That happens a lot, right? And I had this application here, which with this endpoint download.php file equal document.pdf. The first out, potential local file disclosure, local file inclusion, maybe remote file inclusion you might think of too. So there is a lot of things that comes to mind, but yeah, I'm going for local file disclosure here. The classic payloads we all know of, we're going just to do file --etc/password if it's a Linux machine, or maybe going just like for the second payload or the third payload. It all depends about what you're hacking on. But yeah, sadly we got forward Trafford button here, so we can pass. The server doesn't look like to accept that the / here. So what can we do? It all depends about the applications, but a lot of the time what have been working with me on PHP application, most is like Unicode encoding the dots, for example, or Unicode encoding the dash, the slash. Or better, null byte between the dots. So let's see how it works. So we have this website here, cas.wtf/ur. Just like you just give it any input and just gives you back some Unicode translations of the letter or the character you gave. And that might be handy too also for other kind of attacks, not only like server-side request forgery or local file disclosure bypasses, but also like account takeovers. You might have some Unicode not being interpreted very well. So this is really handy. By just trying to encode the dot here, we get this payload that you might be able to try in case the // is blocked. So we have this here, which you might try. I mean, you never know what might happen in the backend, you know? We're hackers, we don't have access to the source code, so if you don't test, you can't know, you have to test. Everything you have in your hands, your weapons here, it's your tries. Requests are so free, no one is going to bill you for that. So you just try it out. And the null byte bypass here is trying to do like dot, null byte, dot, and you just like go for stuff like that. And it's not only to say that this is what I found recently, but in other cases you might also try some other kind of stuff you might think about, not only null bytes, maybe trying encoding some kind of other characters in the request and trying to send it. So. And here, while sending the payload, you can see here the dot, and we have the null byte and download.php, and this one worked very well and gave me access to the application source code. So what we're trying to explain here is not that these are two bypasses only that you might use. It's just to give you the ideas behind like bypasses and how you can try to think and try to come up with other payloads, because you have to use a lot of creativity to be able to achieve this kind of thing. So we're going forward, and this is an interesting topic, which is hacking a bank by finding a 0-day. This vulnerability was in collaboration with Shubs. You all know InfoSec.io, I guess so. And are you really a hacker if you have never hacked a bank? That's the question, huh? And the story of CVE 2022-26352. I was invited to this bug bounty program that was owned by a bank. All the assets were a bank. And they just said, okay, all the subdomains are in scope, just go for what you want and let us know what you find. And first, I started doing recon. So while doing recon, gathering subdomains, looking at applications, CMSs, what is being used in the backend, we found that the application is using mostly a CMS called .cms, which is a Java-based application. And my mate for Java application is called Tubes, you know. So I just like hit Tubes and I say, okay, man, you have to work with me on this one. So what is .cms? .cms is an open source content management system written in Java for managing content and content-driven sites and applications. So the application, the bank here was using this CMS, which they edited a bit, you know, for their needs, for login, for banking purposes mostly, not for the casual purposes, and just like using it or almost like 100 subdomains of them on different servers. So every subdomain using that CMS was just like isolated from the others one. It wasn't like one single server. Everyone was looking for low-hanging bugs because the program has just launched, you know. So everyone is going for automation, trying to nuclei here with basic templates like many people do, and obviously you're going to get duplicated. Nuclei is really powerful, as you have seen in the other talks, but you have to be able to create your own templates and try to find your own bugs and trying to look for them in other hosts. Because obviously, if you go for only the templates that are available, there's a high chance that you're going to get duplicated. And I can tell you that people that are doing automation right now in the industry, they're really good. So like trying to outperform them, like just like with 2 or 3 bash line scripts, that's not going to work at all. So if you want to go for automation, you have to make sure that your automation is like another level. Because when you see guys like Eric, for example, today is new. I mean, he built a hacking system on his own. You can't just come and start using Nuplay public templates and try to overcome and overpass him. That's not going to work. So as I know that, I said, okay, man, let them look for the templates and let us like dig deeper into the application and see what's going on. And we chose to download the CMS and try to go for some wide source auditing and try to find some interesting behavior on the application vulnerabilities. The file here at content resources.java have this little snippet of code here, which tells us that we don't need authentication for certain APIs. And then that's interesting because if for this specific path of the API we don't need authentication, in case we find something interesting, we have like an unauthenticated remote command execution or unauthenticated server-side request forgery, you know, and that at this point you're just game over. There's no reason the bug bounty program is not going to go forward with your bug. And so we had the unauthenticated access to API, and we also found that, oops, there is an arbitrary file upload somewhere in the API. So the CMS is highly tested, the .cms, you might check it later, but a lot of people, a lot of hackers who audited the source code, they missed these vulnerabilities because it was like really hidden in inside the code. And so you had this snippet of code that tells you that, okay, so there's this endpoint inside the API that you can use to upload files. So that's a game over for them. We just get forward. Now we have bug 1++2. So we have unauthenticated access to API, and you have arbitrary file upload. And so connecting the dots, we have an unauthenticated API and arbitrary file upload. Maybe remote command execution in case the directory of the web server is writable, because if it's not writable, it's going to be hassle. Here is the request we had, building a proof of concept. We had this request to /API/content, which we can access without any authentication. And we just tell it, okay, I want to upload this file. And what we did in the file that we're doing path traversal inside the web root directory for the file to be uploaded in the web server directory when we can access the shell we're uploading. And so here we just have like the GSP shellcode we can just like enter. And sadly for us, for this program, the web directory was not writable. It would have been too easy, right? And what we started doing is that we started enumerating files and directories to see which is writable and what can happen, what we can do with that. We identified this certain behavior where 500 error and size 0, so there is no content from the server, a file was written successfully. So as you can see here, I'm not sure if you can see, but it says like /tmp/Hussein/my handle, and it's just like 500 server error, and the file is written here. And in case we get 500 error and the application says could not be created, so the directory does not exist at all. We can't have also create directories permissions. And in case we get like denied directory exists, but we don't have the rights to upload the files to this directory specifically. So as for example here, we try to upload like to proc self-cwd, which is current working directory, to try to upload it there, but no luck. Web root directory not writable, RIP, no remote command execution, sad for us. Other solutions that we might use to achieve other great impact to show the bug bounty program that, oops, yeah, we didn't get remote execution but because we couldn't find any writable directories. But yeah, we can do other stuff. Let us show you. We have found that we're able to replace jar files, Java files, because it was running like Tomcat. And so you have some files that you can replace, and in case there is a system reboot, your remote command execution is just going to get triggered with the reboot. Or we can also replace system files. Some of them were writable. Or you can also adding system config files to the server, maybe uploading SSH credentials and stuff like this. But we chose another way. After digging a bit deeper, we found that remote command execution is not possible, but we have to prove more impact. Solution, we have found that we are able to use a gadget to replace JavaScript files on the server. So what does that mean? That means that by using the vulnerability, we're able to replace any JavaScript files on the domain. So basically stored XSS on the whole banking assets, like all of them. So if you have stored XSS without anything, you have access basically to everything and anything. And it was a huge bank, so the traffic here is pretty much. So how to? We found that by opening a JavaScript file in the browser and looking in the response headers, we had a certain ID that was tied up to the JavaScript file, which is like when a developer uploads a JavaScript file, it just like gets an ID in the database of it. And so that ID was getting sent back in the headers of the response. And the ID's header name was etag in the headers. So we had to upload the file as follow, file name equal, and we found that we had to do like first char of the ID, then second char of the ID, then the full ID, and then the file name we had to save too. If you go forward, you can see here, then e tag for application slash project.js slash this specific file was e tag dot and this random string that was given back to us. So, yeah, so this is how we replace JavaScript files. We just like dot slash to escape out of the thing, and the first char, second char of the ID, the full ID, and the file name and path. And this way we were able to replace the JavaScript file. You can see here that we included a little of console.log with our own handle. So every time you just visit the bank website, puff, we get the cookies back. We didn't do it actually, yeah? So for this part, it's really interesting to know that collaboration can lead you to so much interesting paths. You might be like trying to hack on an application and not finding any solution, trying to bypass what you're trying to hack on. But as soon as you just like go forward and ask some friends that have a bit more knowledge about something specific, he might have the solution to your problems, so you don't have to like just struggle alone. At the end of the day, collaboration just like keeps you motivated. It keeps you hacking more together. It builds good friendship between you, and also more bounties, because the next day, if your friend finds something he can exploit, he's just going to tell you, oh, please come hack with me, try to help me here. And if you know the solution to the issue, just going to help him, and that's going to build a good momentum. And so for this bug, I was a bit disappointed by the bounty, because we had like the same vulnerability on like 100 different subdomains, so totally different servers. And the company decided to reward like 15K for this one. So still good, but not enough for a big bank. We go forward here for SSO bypass techniques. So this is going to be interesting. Shall we enter? Every time you just go to an application, admin.corp.com, and just like, boom, man, Okta, you can pass. Or you just get like another kind of SSO, and you just can't. It says like, you don't pass, you shall not pass, man. Nowadays, most organizations use SSO for internal panel logins and restricted resources. But does it mean that you just stop here? If you open up a subdomain you just found and it says like SSO or some kind of panel, you just like stop it here? You don't have to. Have to go forward, because even though there is SSO or other kind of authentication, you might be able to bypass it using some other techniques and try to access the restricted content and have access to the panels. What it might be handy to do in these cases, it might be handy to brute force directories, look for weak passwords maybe on leaked database, as Adam said early in the morning, sorry. And you might try to hit APIs directly. Maybe if you can find some on GAU tool, you might find some endpoint, try to hit it directly and see how it responds. Or other fancy vectors we'll be talking about today. So fuzzing, don't only look for directories and files, but also brute force parameter on the files. Okay, so let's say you have these subdomains which redirects through Okta, you know, and you start brute forcing the domain for directories and files, and you just find admin.php, which is like a valid file, but it just like keeps sending you back to Okta. You have to try, at least what I do is that I try to try to brute force parameters on the specific endpoints, even though it does send me back to Okta. You might have something like admin.php and the parameters that says, okay, logged in equal true. That might just like tell you, okay, you're in, you know. You don't know what's happening in the backend. So this is a little overview of what's happening. Like, let's say you have this domain admin.org.com and you have, it's sending you back to Okta. You have admin.org.com/blah blah, it says 404 not found. You have this one /internal.php, which says 301 redirect. So here you know that the file exists, because for the previous file we didn't have it. We have a 404 not found. So you know that this one, it's here, but you just don't have access to it. And when we try to brute force for parameters, we just get like ig = 1, and bam, 200 OK. Even though you don't have access to the full panel, you just have access to a limited resource, but it's still enough to prove impact and to try to gather other endpoints. Maybe you might find other endpoints in the response that you might, again, look for parameters on and keep like crawling like this and keep like expanding that attack surface that you have. APIs here. As Yassine said earlier, JavaScript files is like a gold mine, and that's true, 100%. JavaScript files contain so much data, so much information that you might miss if you're not reading, if you're not spending time trying to understand how the application is working, like server-side and the endpoints that are mentioned there. We have this is like pretty simple. You have just like 200 OK to SSO. And once you just like look up for the content source, you just see this different, the different JavaScript files you get on the panel. And the server side, the redirect directory is on like client side, And you just find a casual endpoints, just try it, and you get like 200 OK. So that's really important to look for. So less known, I'm going to talk about some techniques that I have been using the last year. I haven't seen much information about them like in the internet, so I thought that it might be handy to share it with you here. So what I used to do when I saw like panels that had authentication, like SSO, stuff, Okta, and you can just like go in. So I just gathered a list of endpoints, of extensions. So you have .php, .jpg, .png, and all this stuff, .js, and just like gather it all together in one single word list. And I try to brute force the path where I get redirected to other SSO things or Okta or stuff. And at this point, when you try to fuse here with the extensions, so PHP you get 403, HTML 403, and all other things 403. But GPG says like, oh, 404. That's interesting. Because like, okay, the application might be blocking all the kind of extensions because they don't want you to access this. But they say that, okay, GPG files, like image files, nothing sensitive in that. You can access it. If you find something that's living in our directory, having a GPG file, just access it. So in GSP applications, this might be handy. You have already seen the same payload with like just having the comma, the column at the end and stuff. And what I've been doing recently is this kind of payload. So I just take one, the panel that's getting me redirected to brute force for extensions, and then the one that gives like a different response to the others, I'm just going to stick it like this and try to access the panel like this. I've had quite a luck on some private programs with GSP files like this. It doesn't always work, but it's always like worth a try because you never know. Huh? You have, so this is like a little recap of this big title. So you have internet.org.com that gives you SSO. You have then test.js, again SSO. And when you go to test.jpg, for no found, not found, this is really different from what we used to see. So if we just go to internet.org.com with the payload being included here, we get like 200 OK because the server is thinking, okay, this is a GPG file. And we said that, okay, GPG are not harmful. You can access GPG file. And so as this, we were able to access the admin panel of the server. Other fancy vectors that I've been using too recently. So you have this internal.org.com that sends you back to SSO. While doing just like looking for the CNAME of this specific domain, I just find, okay, this like org.thirdparty.com or completely another domain.com that's not like the company's. By using, again, GAU and trying to gather endpoints, way back URLs and stuff, you can find another subdomains on that same CNAME domain, which says, okay, /authentication / register, that lives like in one of the subdomains. And you might think, okay, maybe I can like gather all these endpoints that are living on this specific domain and try to brute force them on my target and see how it goes. And luckily, you just get 200K, you can just sign up easily. So this was one of the bugs I found on some programs, and just by doing that, by trying to check the CNAME, reversing, and just like checking the endpoints on that domain, gathering them all together, bringing a word list, brute forcing on my target, I just got that authentication / register, which was living under my target, and so I could just like sign up and get access to the panel. The last title of this talk is going to be another cross-site scripting level. I love when things are interesting. I don't love when it's easy, because you have more fun when it's difficult. If it's just too easy, just come and just do the stuff and you go. That's not fun at all, you know. So we had this specific JavaScript file, which is okay. So we're going to take an inc parameter here. Application expects an inc parameter, and the hostname supplied in the parameter has to end with .org.com, and the path of the supplied parameter URL should start with /includes /JSCDN. And so the application, once you just supply a valid payload for this, for what it's expecting, it's going just to get the content of the file and include the script on the page. What do we need? We need something that looks like this: subdomain.org.com /includes the specific JSCDN file, .js, which will contain XSS payload, such as alert1. At this point, you just think, okay, let me search for a subdomain takeover. But what happens if you don't have? That's the interesting point here. If you don't have one, maybe you will try to get remote execution on some other subdomains and try to maybe write the files even though you don't have the permission to. That's not a good way. You have to try to chain other vulnerabilities, trying to gather other data that you have saved while hunting on the application, seeing what might be used to finally pop the alert. Subdomain takeover, create the folder and the JS file, no luck, no takeover. If there are any other possibilities. So while hunting on the same target, I found that another subdomain of the target had a CRLF vulnerability. At this point, we had this subdomain here, and by doing that, we get CRLF really easily. So what happens if we do support.org.com and the CRLF wasn't on the endpoint, but it was like an application level issue. So any path had this specific CRLF. So what happens if we do that? We just like we just include the path the vulnerable script is expecting, and adding like the CRLF after that with the content we want to do. And here we just go, okay, so let's use the CRLF to host a file. The file that we will be using to cross-load on the other vulnerable endpoint and check how it's going. So we built this payload which says, okay, set content type equal applications JavaScript, and also set alert at the end, like on the start of the file. So at this point, you can think that, okay, we're just going to include that link inside the parameter, and that it might work. But once I tried to do that, I had a problem here because there was a CORS issues. The application wasn't letting me load that other subdomains because of CORS issues. What can we do here? Let's set the access control allow origin on the CRLF. So here we just like use the CRLF first to set the access control allow origin. We also use the CRLF to set the content type. Also use the CRLF to set to build the payload alert, like in the start of the file. And now we can just use that to cross-load. And just like, yeah. And here, go back, and finally we have date popping. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention also that we're launching WebMinify, which is a pen test company. So if any of you guys need any pen test, you can just contact us. Thank you, question. So this is really, thank you so much. So this is an iceberg, and you can see that the discovered vulnerability is really small, and the yet to be found vulnerability is really huge. As Yassine said earlier, a good hacker, when it comes to a program, just see like 1,000 vulnerabilities found. That's nothing. That's nothing at all, because I think differently than you. You might think differently than other person. Everyone has his own techniques. Everyone has his own mindset for hacking. So what you might find, other might not find. So you just go for it and test it. You don't know what might happen there. I'm here to now answer to your questions. Thank you for the light. Any questions? Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Sorry, where are you?
Sir, from here.
Oh, okay, man. Hey.
Thanks for the talk, sir. I have only two questions that I'm asking from the morning.
Sorry, can you? Yeah, I can hear you.
I have only two main questions that and those two questions I'm asking from every pen tester that I know.
Yeah.
First question is how to get to know the non-mainstream bugs. Like we know about the accesses, we know about the SQL, but there are non-mainstream bugs like Pi or 2.0, which we really don't know.
Can you repeat what kind of vulnerabilities you're looking for?
Actually, I meant to ask is how do we get to know the non-mainstream bugs?
How do we get to?
Know the name of non-mainstream bugs.
Non-mainstream bugs. Yeah. Yeah, non-mainstreams. It's like the first vulnerability we have tried to showcase here, which was like an account takeover via confusion.
No, these are like SSRF. I know about SSRF.
No, the first one where you're here, the first title of the. So it's like business logic issues you're looking for, kind of.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah, that's by reading documentations mostly. So if you don't read the documentation and you don't understand how the application works, you might not find what is not expected, what is not mainstream. By reading the documentations and trying to understand how the application works, you might be able to understand that, oops, okay, this is not intended. So I might be able to try this, and if it works, this is the vulnerability. If you don't know how the application, a lot of hackers just go and say, okay, I have this application I'm hacking on, no problem, I'm just going to try SQL injection, cross-site scriptings, and they just keep the business logic issues. Well, it's really interesting to look for them because less people read documentation and try to understand the application purposes.
So the second question is, before hunting a bug, you have to know the bug. And before knowing the bug, you need to follow a certain type of framework, certain type of steps. I want to know what are your steps to learn a certain kind of bug.
You have to go to, I didn't get the last part, sorry.
I want to know about the methodology, how you learn about a bug.
How I learn about the bug?
Yes.
Which one?
Any kind of bug, like say there is a new zero-day come and you have to learn about it. What are the steps, what type of framework do you follow to learn about the bug?
Yeah, for example, Portsfigure does a lot of labs and there are a lot of like techniques, showcases on blogs, and they do a lot of labs. So I think they cover up pretty much everything. So you just have to go and try to replay the labs, try to think why it's working, and don't cheat, So just try the labs on your own. If you don't get it, you can go and see the solutions and go to the other level. Also try HackMe, the platform also does really great work for learning. Might just like go learn a vulnerability, try to reproduce, and the most important, practicing on real targets. Just take some big targets like with a lot of in-scope domains like Yahoo, for example, everything is in scope there, and just try to replicate. That's going to be a good way to start. Yeah, there's someone in the middle, I think.
Hello.
Hey man.
If we have to choose in between like bug bounty either or any certification, so what should be our first priority? Any certification related or a bug bounty? Because if we choose bug bounty, we usually don't get time for certifications and all of the other skills like pen testing and networkings.
Okay, so if I get your question, so you're asking what you should do, either bug bounty or certificates?
Yeah, certificate, like we should focus on skills or bug bounty. Like sometimes we need to focus on skills like pen testing and all the other kind of.
Depends. What are your goals? You have to know what you want to do. So if you're just here to do bug bounty, you don't need certificates for bug bounty. But if you're trying to get a job or something, they might ask you a certificate. So you have to know where you're going.
Okay, so yeah, thank you.
If you're trying to land a job as a pen tester, for example, some companies might ask you, do you have certificates? It might help you getting the job easily. But if you're just like going to do full bug bounty, you don't need anyone to see any certificates of yours. You just have your own skills, you don't need any certificates. But yeah, that really depends on your goals, what you're looking to do.
I have another question. Actually, I have a situation in which I was able to inject XSS from CRLF. But the thing is the parameter dot is blocked from firewall. Like we cannot insert that. So what should be best practice?
The dot?
Yeah, dot.
In what kind of attack?
CRLF to XSS.
Yeah, why do you need the dot?
Like document.cookie.
Okay, document.cookie, but you can use others. There's a lot of other things you might use. Can you do like 2 or 3 only just to pop an alert?
I tried some tricks, but didn't work. Like most of the parameters are blocked by the firewall.
Yeah, you have a lot of JavaScript alternatives you can use besides of that. Maybe also what you might be able to do is trying to make the CRLF load another script, outside script, where you will have your full payload. Do you understand what I mean? Okay, so using the CRLF to just like create a script that is going to fetch another script, external script, and then using it.
Oh, got it.
Message me the endpoint on Twitter. Okay, I will try to look into it. Do you have other questions?
No.
Yeah, man.
Hi, Hussein. First of all, amazing talk, loved it. My question to you is that do you think that bug bounty can be pursued as a full-time career? And if yes, then how do you deal with the mental stress and frustration?
So, can you do bug bounty on a full-time career? You can, but are you ready for that? Are you ready to, it all depends. Interesting thing is that if you're able to set some money that might get you secure for 1 or 2 years forward, you can go for bug bounty. But I don't recommend going for bug bounty full-time if you can't like secure at least 1 or 2 years of monthly expenses, life expenses. Because you don't know what might happen. Today you might find a lot of bugs. 2 months later, you're burned out, nothing, 0 bugs, 0 money coming in. And you don't have anything saved. So that's really complicated.
And how do you deal with the mental frustration? How do you free yourself from the exhaustion and all those things?
Sorry?
How do you free yourself from the exhaustion or not finding bugs? So what do you do in your free time?
I just like go log out, that's it. If I can't find bugs, I can't find bugs. It means that my mind isn't ready to look for bugs. It's just like you're overwhelmed, man. It happens, we're not robots. If you just can't find bugs and you feel like you don't want to hack, only hack when you feel like you want to hack, not when you think that you have to hack. Only when you feel like it. Because if you hack because in your head you have to hack, obviously not going to be productive at all. And it's not going to be fun.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, Hussein. So,
Hello.
so my question is like, many times while finding vulnerabilities on programs, there are web application firewalls and like they are updated or like to the latest version. So how do you usually find bypasses for them?
Okay, so first thing, have you tried like looking for origin IP addresses?
Yeah. So like from the web, like you can get all sorts of content. Like someone has just posted a bypass on Twitter or somewhere else, and you have tried all of them. Then what you do, like there's HTML injection, and you can verify that thing, but you want to escalate and like create some impact, like maybe cross-site scripting, or you are trying for SQL injection and like it's not working due to web application firewall. A particular payload you want to try and it's not working. So how do you usually like try to bypass it?
So WAF bypassing, I think it's not like something that you might be able to summarize in one answer because it's so big, You have a lot of kind of WAF bypasses. Recently, when we had the integrity event for the WAF bypass contest, there was a lot of great bypasses from other hackers, even though I also found some cool vulnerabilities. And other people were playing with headers, or other people were playing with like the main application, just trying to fool the WAF. But what I always try to do first is just like, I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to find the origin IP. So once for all, I have the IP address, the origin IP address, then I don't have to break my head trying to bypass any payload for any future vulnerability I get, either it be SQL injection or other vulnerabilities. So now the question is that how do you find the origin IP address in some application? I'm just going to showcase like some techniques like out of my head right now. First, if you can get the ASNs of the application, you just like grab all ASNs, extract like all the hosts inside of this, get their IP ranges, and try to check for all live HTTP servers. You get the title from your website, and you compare to try to find the same title on the IPs. This way, you might find the origin IP address. Another thing is that you might, for example, be able, if the application is using a mail server on their own server, so when you do, for example, password reset, and you just like send it to an email on Burp Collaborator, you're going to get an IP there. If the application is hosting the webmail on their own servers, you're going to get the IP there. And you have a lot of other techniques there. But I will make sure to, if you ping me on Twitter, I will send you the links to the other hackers' bypasses in the WAF contest. And there is a lot to learn from there. I learned a lot from them. Really great articles.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Thank you, man. My pleasure.
Great
hey, man, yeah, the light is blinding, so yeah, it's
great
okay.
talk and interesting findings. I just wanted to ask about one of the bugs you showed was the CRLF injection.
Yeah.
The exercise was using a subdomain. Does it also, can you execute the script from a subdomain? Like, is it not protected by same origin policy?
Sorry?
Is it not protected by same origin policy because the XSX, the alert you posted was on a subdomain and not the domain, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we did add the access control allow headers. So here, can you see in red?
Okay.
Okay, so we just allowed it using the CRLF.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We have a last one here, and we go. Can we?
Yeah, sure.
It's okay.
Hello?
Hey,
Hey?
who's talking?
Yeah.
Where are you? Oh, up there,
Oh,
behind
okay.
the lights, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
So
it's okay.
what I want to ask is a pretty general question. So the thing is like, there are a lot of ways to approach a particular bug, right? For example, LFI, you have multiple bypasses for that. Like you can encode and everything like you showcased in your presentation.
Exactly.
So just in case if the application is not vulnerable, let's say, like how do you stop a particular test case? Like it's pretty easy to get hung up on a particular test case and try over and over again. So how do you actually approach this situation?
So can you repeat the last part?
So actually, like, it is pretty easy to get hung up on a particular test case, since for any particular test case, like you have multiple bypasses and multiple ways of approaching a particular bug.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that you cover the maximum test cases? And
Oh,
like
yeah. I mean, Bug bounty is like a return on an investment of time. So if you're going to spend like 24 hours on one endpoint and not getting something from it, it's not worth it, you know.
Yeah.
So if you try different things for like, for example, for 1 hour, you just try and it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you have to stick to it, you know. That's a mistake I also do. I do it myself. But you have just like save it off, try to go hack on other things, and then come back to it when you have more ideas to try. There is obviously for as an answer to your question, it's never too much of techniques. It's never too much. It's not like, okay, I've tested this amount of techniques, it's not working, so I'm out. No, it's never too much. You have to go till the end of what you think might be working. But yeah, just like 1 hour, if it doesn't work out, okay, I'm out for today, going to think again about other attacks, coming back, you know.
Okay. Okay, thank you, that cleared up.
Thank you. Last one here, he was, yeah. It's been like 1 hour, he's like, save me. Yeah.
Hi, Hussein. It was a nice talk.
Thank you.
My questions are, first of all, how to bypass sandboxing?
How to bypass?
Sandbox in a
What
website.
kind of?
Sandbox on a website or web apps.
Do you mean, for example, remote command execution sandboxes, like when the application is sandboxed, or other
Yes.
kind of?
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to take a talk.
Okay. Okay, then maybe let's skip to second question. That is, how can we identify rabbit hole vulnerabilities?
How can we?
Identify rabbit hole vulnerabilities. It's like we think that that is a vulnerability which will be on that. We will be. Let's imagine that we are pen testing an application, or we are scanning it for bug bounty, and we try some bugs which we think it can work, but eventually it's not there. It won't work. So is there any way that we can find it directly that these are the vulnerabilities which are not actually going to work, even if it seems so it will work?
That's all by experience, and also you can automate these kind of things. If, for example, you are taking some endpoints from way back years and just like automating cross-site scripting on it, that's going to be easy for you to know that, okay, all these endpoints are not vulnerable for that, or SQL injection, or if you automate, you know, but you can't just like assume that something is not going to work. That's a really bad idea to assume that something is not going to work. You have to give all your time, try to bypass, try to exploit something, and if manually, because you can't rely on automation too much, if manually you see that it's not working, then there is no way around. You just like, it's not working, or maybe you don't have the good skills yet to achieve it, but in the future, you just go back to it and you will find it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hussein. I'm very sure just like me, everybody else has been looking forward to his talk, and it has been worth the wait, correct? Let's give a round of applause for Hussein. Thank you.